Very shocking news. Yesterday in Liverpool, a man drove his car through a crowd of football fans, nearly killing people. Almost 50 people were injured, including 4 children, after this car ran straight through this crowd. Within 2 hours of this driver ploughing his car in this crowd of football fans, an arrest has been made of a 53-year-old British white male. There were hundreds and hundreds, thousands of fans on the streets of Liverpool celebrating, enjoying their time, when all of a sudden, chaos. It was pure chaos when this guy decided to drive his car directly into people. The police are not treating this incident as terrorist related. The Prime Minister Keir Starmer has come out with a statement saying the whole country stands with Liverpool after scenes of joy turned into utter horror and devastation on Monday night.
Do you want to watch a scary video with me? What do you mean no? I heard yes. After this, nobody ask me to babysit your kid, please and thank you. Actually, before I say anything else, let me just go ahead and show you the video. No.
Liam, come here. Liam, right now. What is it?
What the
Okay, I'm calling your mom. Just stay right here.
Like, what do you mean that chair is rocking by itself? Also, the fact that she was like, come over here, let me call your mom. Besties, I would be outside with that kid in my car. We would be calling the parents from my car, shit, maybe from my house, because I probably would have driven the fuck away from there. I feel like this in itself is already like a spooky little scenario, because 1, you're babysitting. 2, is a human gonna come here? Are they gonna do something crazy? Let me check the doors, let me check the windows. Never in my mind would I have thought that something paranormal would happen while I'm babysitting. And honestly, I feel like this video is real just by her reaction alone and how quickly that kid thankfully listened to her. Imagine the kid's just like, oh, no thank you, I'm gonna sit on this rocking chair right now. Anyway, what would you do?
This camp for pedophiles in Vermont is incredibly disturbing. So this is the MAP camp, or Minor Attracted Persons Camp, which is the name that pedophiles are trying to use to escape the stigma. So last year, somebody in Vermont discovered this event page online, and what they found was absolutely disturbing. Apparently, this camp for pedophiles was held September 19th through September 22nd of 2024, and they wouldn't reveal where they were camping. But this was a huge group of pedophiles camping alone in the woods, and some people said that this was happening in near proximity to a school. So on their website, they listed potential risks. They're talking about normal camping risks here, but then they said exposure to pedophiles and other weirdos. And also common risks with hiking and other outdoor activities. This is from their actual website. Blisters, getting lost, insect bites and stings, heat exhaustion, falling, tripping because you were distracted by a sexy minor instead of watching where you were going. No sexy children around to look at, a common problem when hiking. So obviously nobody would want this event near their hometown, especially near a school. And this turned into an entire storm in this small town in Vermont. They held community meetings with leaders from their town. Campgrounds denied that they allowed these people to camp out there. But according to this group, or from what we could find online, it did happen. And it might happen again next year. And this just goes to show that the normalization of this stuff is never okay. In my opinion, pedophiles deserve the stigma, especially the ones that actually harm kids. If you want to hear me rant more about stuff like this, listen to my podcast, The Conspiracy Files, which is available on all streaming platforms, or you can watch the video version of my show on YouTube, and I cover topics like this all the time.
Let's talk about another haunted doll. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and recently I was sitting down with one of my friends, and she told me legitimately the most terrifying ghost story I've ever heard about a haunted doll. So let's get into it. So here's the context of how the doll got to her and her family. Essentially, her neighbor was moving away and was like, hey, I can't take this doll with me. Can you guys keep her for me? I don't know why this neighbor would give them the doll. I don't know. And unfortunately, this doll wasn't like a Raggedy Ann doll. This was a large porcelain vintage doll. So my friend and her family agreed to keep the doll for their neighbor. And my friend specifically says that when they started having the doll in their home, there was just like some weird energy going on around the doll. And they specifically started to notice, and this gives me chills, that the doll's fingers started falling off. Like, porcelain fingers would go missing. And they had no idea where the fingers were going. They were never able to find them. And just as a reminder, this wasn't a tiny porcelain doll where, like, the fingers could go missing if you, like, bumped it wrong. This was a pretty big porcelain doll, from my understanding. Eventually it got to the point, I don't know how long into them having the doll where they decided to get rid of it, but it was essentially, this doll's really weird and it freaks us out and there's something wrong with it. So I'm pretty sure they donated it. So if you needed a sign to not buy things from thrift stores, especially porcelain dolls, that was it. But it gets worse. So my friend was doing her laundry, and the way that their house is set up, the washer and dryer are in the basement where the doll used to be. She's just doing her thing when out of the corner of her eye, she sees this little thing run. And it was wearing the same color dress that the porcelain doll had, and it was about the same size as the porcelain doll. And my friend said after that experience, she refused to do anything in the basement or do her laundry in the basement for a long time. And that she still hates going down there. And I don't know what it is about seeing things out of the corner of your eye. Way scarier than I think seeing something at face value. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
If you ever feel lonely or nobody would notice if you disappeared, I need you to hear this story. Her name was Joyce Vincent, and for 3 years, no one called her, no one visited her, not a friend, not a colleague, not a family member, not even a neighbour noticed or realised something was very wrong. Her bills kept piling up. The lights stayed on 24/7, her TV was constantly running, and mail was piling up at her front door, yet still nobody noticed. It wasn't until the housing officers turned up to repossess her flat because the rent hasn't been paid in 3 years. When they turned up, nobody was answering the door, so they eventually just break the door down and let themselves in. When they walked in, it was almost like the flat was frozen in time. The TV was still on, turned to BBC One. The sink had stacked up dishes and there were still unopened Christmas presents. The most chilling thing, they found a woman's body, deceased, in front of the TV, clutching a shopping bag. It was Joyce Vincent, and she had been there for almost 3 years, and at this point she was now just a skeleton. Joyce was 38 years old and she had worked in a major firm, Ernst & Young. She quit her job suddenly, moved from place to place, didn't really have any close friends. She used to see people more of like on high on by basis, didn't really have any like boyfriends or anyone that was like checking on her or she was seeing regularly, and eventually just became more and more isolated. When she died, likely of an asthma attack, there was no one left in her life to notice. I mean, her remains were so decomposed they had to use dental records to identify her. A filmmaker did later track down Joyce's life to kind of understand what happened. Some hadn't heard of her in years and others just thought she moved on. Joyce didn't vanish all of a sudden. She slowly faded away.
Okay, so the video that I'm about to show you is in Spanish, so I'm gonna explain what the guy is saying, even though there is English subtitles on the video. So this guy was contracted to fix this house, and he says that every time he's there alone, he can hear footsteps on that top part of the house. I don't know if it could be like an echo from somebody next door, but the fact that it happens very consistently and it's at nighttime is just freaky. You guys need to see this.
Pues siempre pasa cuando estoy aquí solo, estoy solo en esta casa, completamente solo. Siempre que estoy solo, hay algo raro en este pasillo. Yo no lo entiendo, se lo he dicho a muchas personas y no lo entiendo. Cuando yo trabajo en esta área de acá, siempre que trabajo se escuchan pasos. Entonces, cuando me meto acá, se escucha que alguien camina arriba. Y está pasando aquí arribita. Está pasando arribita. Y no hay nada. Uy, qué pedo.
Like, maybe you can say it's an echo from like the neighbors or something, but if that was the case and I bought that house, there's no way I'd want to live there with all that sound. I mean, those steps sounded like they were coming from in the house. Or am I tripping? You guys can tell me, let me know.
Ladies, do not let a man cook for you unless you run a background check on him first. Story time. Let us begin. Okay, so this girl goes on vacation and she meets a guy online, okay? They go on their first date and hit it off. Like, this guy is a green flag all throughout. He's doing everything right. So obviously she's telling her friends that this guy is like her perfect man. I'm seeing a pattern of girls dealing with these weird men on vacation, so just be careful when you go on vacation. So obviously when this guy is doing everything right, her literal dream man asks her on a second date, she doesn't even think twice. She says, of course. And he's like saying all these things like, I'm gonna bring you over to my home. I wanna cook a nice hot warm meal for you. Like, she's eating it up. She's like, yes, like, oh my gosh, he's a perfect guy and he can cook. So she doesn't even think twice. She says yes. She doesn't even think, oh, he could be a criminal. She just says yes and goes. So the day of the second date comes and she goes over to his house and he cooks her a whole great meal and he lets her know like, hey, I'm a vegan, so this may taste a little bit different. And she actually enjoys the meal. She's like, oh my god, she's looking at this guy like, you're my husband, like you're my soulmate, you're good at all these things and you can cook. So she devours that meal and they have a great second date and she goes home. Remember, he told her that he's a vegan. Keep that in mind. I also want to add, she was super impressed with how clean and unlived in his house looked, okay? Immediately the next day, this girl starts feeling sick as hell, like she cannot stop throwing up. So she goes to the hospital. Obviously, the hospital runs their checks and the doctor comes back to her and says, listen, in the last 24 hours, have you by any chance ingested human flesh? Yeah, human flesh. So obviously she's sitting there in shock and she's like, what did these people just say to me? And then it clicks in her head that the last meal she ate was the meal that her dream husband man cooked for her. And she can't believe it. So obviously this becomes a police situation. She tells them everything. They obviously go to his house to find out that it was an Airbnb rented out in a completely different name than his. And they obviously went to like her dating app to find anything of him. Everything was wiped. As I always say, I hope you guys did not enjoy this video. And ladies, please just be safe and mindful about the people around you, whether it's in your own city or on vacation, because you have to understand that not everyone has your best interests at heart. And that's just the sad truth and reality of things. So one stupid decision of yours could literally change your whole life. So just keep that in mind. Love you guys. Bye.
So she gets home one day and immediately the feeling, it's overpowering. And it feels kind of cold too. The kids weren't in the house, so it was just her. So she's sitting on the couch, she's relaxing, and then she hears her name being called. Not only was her name being called, but it sounded like her husband calling her. So her not knowing what we know, she answers. Let's call her husband Bob. She immediately gets up and she goes, Bob, is that you? And she hears her name being called again. And it sounds like it's coming from the kitchen. So she goes to the kitchen, but nobody's there. And so she's trying to talk to Bob. She's like, baby, talk to me. Is that you? Please talk to me. But nothing. And so now she's just standing there like confused. But she also has a bad feeling about this. Like something is telling her, this is not your husband. It's not Bob. And so this made her kind of sad all over again. And she starts crying. She just goes back to the couch and she's just sitting there crying. As she's crying, she swears she hears, help me, coming from the kitchen again. So at this point, she starts to really get creeped out. So she's like, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk because this is like way too much for me. Then she goes to grab her keys. And where she had her keys, there was a picture frame, like family pictures and stuff like that. She said that every single picture that had his face on it started to fly across the room. 2 of them only missing her head by like an inch. And this was the moment that she realized, I fucked up. This is not my husband. So she immediately leaves the house, like runs out the house. She calls a coworker of hers that she had been explaining that these things were happening to. Her coworker was Latina and she knew about brujeria and stuff like that. Her coworker told her that, I don't think that's your husband. I really doubt that that's your husband. And her coworker told her, like, you should have never done that. Like, I'm not blaming you for doing that, but just for next time, don't do it. But the thing about it is she has to come back home because she has to go pick up the kids soon. And where are the kids gonna stay? So after about like 30 minutes of like going on a walk outside and trying to figure this thing out, she comes back to the house to clean up all of the glass that was on the floor in the living room. Her coworker told her that she would bring her pastor to the house to pray over the house. So she goes home, she cleans up, she cleans up the glasses and stuff like that. She goes to pick up the kids. And later on that day, her coworker would come with her pastor to pray over the house, like I said.
This is easily my scariest experience. A follower named Charlotte sent me this spooky story, and we're going to call it Under the Bed. Charlotte is from the UK, and she vividly remembers this experience. She says she was about 17 years old and it was summertime. Being the oldest, she would help her mom a lot with her chores, and this specific day, her mom was cleaning her sister's room, so she thought she'd help her clean her brother's room. She had 3 brothers and they all shared the same room. She walks in, 2 of her brothers are sitting on top of the bed playing video games while the third is laying under the bed playing on the phone, and she says that this was very normal and he did this very often. She could see his feet peeking out from under the bed, so she's like, whatever. She slowly starts to pick up their room. She goes towards the window, picks up the blinds, and she notices that the blanket from the bed is being dragged under, and her little brother kind of like rolled himself around the blanket. She continues to clean the room, then she needs to make the bed. So she tells her brothers, okay, I need y'all to get out so I can do the bed. The 2 brothers that were sitting on top of the bed go outside. The brother that's under the bed stays in there, but she needs him to get out because she needs the blanket to fix the bed. She kneels down, she budges him, he doesn't want to move, he doesn't want to get out. She pinches him, she tries tugging the blanket from him, nothing. So she's over it, she yells for mom. Mom comes in and she's like, what is going on now? What are you yelling about? And she's like, he doesn't want to get out from under the bed. He doesn't want to let go of the blanket, and I need to make the bed. So mom is like, who's under there? She says, Alex. We're going to call him Alex. Her mom kind of makes a face and she's like, that's impossible because he left a little over an hour ago to the neighbor's house to go play. And she says that immediately her heart sank. She looks under the bed, grabs the blanket, and it comes out like nothing, light as a feather. She's freaking out because she's like, there's no way. She goes, lifts the mattress to look through the bars that are under there, and there is literally nobody there. Now remember, she saw his feet, she saw his silhouette playing with the phone, she saw the blanket being rolled around, she's tugging the blanket isn't moving, she's pinching him, but there's nobody under the bed. She says she never left the room, so it was impossible for him to leave because she was literally right there, right by the bed. And she could physically feel a body underneath that bed. She says this is the scariest experience that she's ever had, and she has no idea how to explain it. What do you guys think? Thank you so much to Charlotte for sending me this spooky story. If you guys have any other stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them, and I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
My story takes place in Chihuahua, Mexico, back in 2015. I was 11 years old at that time. I live in the US, but my mom decided we should visit Mexico during my summer break to spend time with family since almost all of our relatives are from there. My family lives in one of the more run-down barrios, where it can be dangerous to walk alone because of the gangs and kidnappings that used to be common. Because of this, I was never alone in this story that I'm about to share. I was close to my cousin, who was around the same age as me, so we were always together. She moved around a lot, going from house to house, and to be honest, all of her houses creeped me out. But there was one in particular that still sends chills down my spine every time I walk past it. Whenever we visited Mexico, we always stayed at my grandma's house. My cousin's house was only a 5-minute walk from there. Like I mentioned before, my grandma's neighborhood was pretty run down. Most of the houses were old and worn out, but my cousin's house was different. Her house was beautiful. It was 2 stories, freshly painted white, and looked pristine compared to the others. It had a massive white see-through gate and 4 large windows. But despite its appearance, there was something about the house that felt off. At the time, Netflix was a big deal, and my cousin was the only one who had access to it. My sister and two of my older cousins would often go to her house just to watch movies. Well, one afternoon, my cousin and I were at my grandma's house when we got bored and decided to go watch a movie at her place. Since we knew my sister and cousins were already inside, my cousin didn't bother asking her mom for the house key. We walked over and knocked on the door. No one answered. We knocked again, and still nothing. After waiting a while, we decided to sit near a small food store across the street from her house. Since her windows were thin, we figured my sister and cousins would eventually hear us. My cousin started calling out my sister's name, yelling for her to open the door. We kept calling for about 5 minutes, when suddenly, someone peeked through the upstairs window. The curtain moved slightly, and I saw a girl with long dark hair wearing a long white dress. She looked almost exactly like my sister. My cousin shouted at her again to open the door. Instead of responding, the girl just pointed at us and smiled, but not a normal smile. It was mocking, almost as she was taunting us. At that point, we were mad. It was obvious they were messing with us. We assumed they were just playing around, ignoring us on purpose. My cousin ran back to my grandmother's house to complain to her mom about how my sister and cousin wouldn't let us in. My mom ended up calling my sister and scolding her for not opening the door. By the time we walked back, they finally opened the door for us. My cousin, still annoyed, asked why they didn't open the door when they clearly had seen us outside. That's when they told us something that made my heart drop.
I always find photos like this taken just seconds before tragedy so eerie and disturbing. Tourists who spotted this even joked that either this man will throw the woman off or the woman will throw the man. It was June 2018 in Butterfly Valley in Muğla, Turkey. Turkey in general is a really beautiful place. I did go there back in about 2013, but this particular area is an incredibly popular beauty spot. Tourists flock to take in the stunning views, and I think you can see from this photo just how beautiful the area is. And couple Hakan Aysal and his wife, 32-year-old Semra Aysal, were doing just that, or so she thought. Now, Semra was the most loving woman. She was extremely kind and sweet, and she was gonna be a mum. She was gonna be the most amazing mum. She was really looking forward to having her baby. She was 7 months pregnant. The pair actually seemed perfect to the outside world. I feel like that's my most common phrase in these crime videos. As I said, they were expecting a child very soon. They were married. This was supposed to be their final trip together as just the two of them. And it was, but for the most horrifying reason. Now, the Butterfly Valley cliff was 1,000 feet up, and many tourists are enticed up there by the lure of those beautiful views. I mean, it looks absolutely stunning from the pictures I can see. But little did Semra know she'd been lured up there for the most sinister reason. Now, Semra was afraid of heights, but her husband had convinced her that the trip up there would be worth it in the end. So he did ultimately succeed in luring her to the edge of the cliff to take some photos. Now, they'd been up the cliff around 3 hours, and Hakan had been waiting for the exact time to strike. He took the photo and waited for an opportunity when nobody seemed to be around, and then callously shoved his pregnant wife off the edge of the cliff. Horrifically, she plummeted to her death. And after hearing his pregnant wife slam into the ground, he calmly made his way down the cliff. He then flagged down a passerby in a car for a lift, and he explained to the man that offered him the lift his wife had fallen off the cliff by accident, but the driver just felt like something was a little bit off about his demeanour. He described him as completely calm, which, given the circumstances, you just wouldn't be. He said, "We immediately got out of the car and started looking for her, but we couldn't see where she would have landed from where we were. We tried to get closer to the edge for a better look. Hakan did not come with us down there. He was not acting like a man whose wife had just fallen off a cliff." And after the news made its way to the media and images were shared online of the couple, a tourist actually came forward to say that they'd witnessed the pair on the cliff. They noticed that it was really odd that the pair were kind of scrambling down a particularly rocky and dangerous looking area to get to the very edge. It was certainly not what you would be doing if you were pregnant or you were with your pregnant wife. The pair were even captured on video by a tourist who joked, either this man will throw the woman off or the woman will throw the man. And in just about the most obvious, ridiculous move ever, Hakan then tried to claim on an insurance payout, the life insurance that he had taken out on his wife just prior to this trip. He tried to claim insanity, but it was pretty obvious that he'd done this for a financial motive, and he was ordered to serve at least 30 years behind bars before he can appeal for release.
I almost got trapped in a haunted hotel. Before I begin, make sure to follow my socials here and subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm always posting story times there. And Wyatt, thank you so much for sending in this story. So this story happened last November to Wyatt and his friend Cameron. During that time, they all went to Chicago for his birthday to go to the WWE Survivor Series. And of course, like anyone else, when traveling afar, you have to get a hotel, and that's what they did. Wyatt said they did stuff all day for his birthday. You know, they were having fun, getting crunk, but all that fun came to an end when nighttime hit. That night, Wyatt and his friend decided to roam the whole entire hotel, which soon they would realize was a big mistake. Wyatt said him and his friend got in the elevator to head upstairs, and when the door opened, a lady that supposedly worked at the hotel was already standing inside. Wyatt said as soon as the door closed, the lady turned to them and said, "This place is haunted. You can hear stuff, and the elevator will randomly send you straight up or straight down." Wyatt said in that moment, him and his friend were freaked out. But they soon let it go because they thought that the lady was playing a prank on them. When the elevator finally reached the floor that they were heading, they got out and the lady followed. She went her separate way to work, but Wyatt said he found it really strange and weird that they both kept randomly seeing her in corners or just standing in random places around the floor that they were on. It was almost as if this lady was watching them. After Wyatt and his friend were done exploring that floor, they both went back onto the elevator to head to floor 4. Wyatt said he remembers clearly clicking on floor 4, but for some odd reason it went past floor 4 and went straight up to floor 15. Floor 15 being the top floor. Both boys were confused, but as soon as the elevator hit floor 15 and the doors opened, they still stepped out to see where they were and what they were going to explore. Wyatt said this floor was strange. It wasn't like any of the other floors that had rooms on the sides. It was a random hallway with paintings on each side, and one right turn led to a big, gigantic ballroom. He said this ballroom was filled with white everything. White tablecloth, white balloons, just anything you can imagine was white. After looking around this ballroom and getting a really eerie, strange feeling, both boys turned around and headed back to the elevator. Wyatt said when they clicked the elevator button, nothing was working. So in that moment, both boys were very, very confused. Because the elevator was working 2 seconds ago, so what is happening? They quickly turned to find a stair door, but when they went to open it, that was locked. Those two boys quickly realized that they had no way out. Wyatt said him and his friend had 2 options. Either walk down and explore some more, or continue to try that elevator button. Wyatt said they went with option number 2 because they heard something down that hallway, and trust me, I would have chose option number 2 too. They pressed the elevator button multiple times and finally it came up. The only thing is that when it opened, the same lady from before was there. Wyatt and his friend quickly hid around the corner and they watched as this lady walked by and started dusting off the paintings. While her back was turned, both boys ran into the elevator, pressed the lobby button, and went down without her. Fast forward, while both boys were in the lobby, to get their mind off of what just happened, they decided to talk about the WWE series. They were having just a normal conversation, all fears went away, until they had to step back on that elevator again. Since it was already way too late and both boys were getting tired, they decided to head back upstairs to go to sleep. Wyatt said they pressed the floor that they were supposed to go to, when all of a sudden the doors closed, and the top said B for basement. The elevator started to move down, and at this point both boys were freaking out. When the doors finally opened to the basement, Wyatt said it literally looked like a black void. There were no lights, and because of this, there was no way to tell how big this basement was. Wyatt said him and his friend were standing there in fear, when all of a sudden they heard, "Who is it?" So keep in mind, what they're seeing in front of them is complete darkness. Wyatt said after that person said that, they heard from afar footsteps turn to jogging, then turn to running. Wyatt said as soon as they heard these footsteps coming towards them, they started spamming the close button. Luckily, the door closed before the person got there and they went up to their room. Wyatt said after that night they never saw the lady again, and the elevator was working like normal. Wyatt and his friend to this day still wonders what goes on floor 15, and who was down in that basement, and what would have happened if that door never closed.
This is a terrifying story about a mimic. New Year High. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and not so recently I opened an email where anyone who finds this page would be able to send in their ghost stories. And this story is definitely up there with one of the scarier ones I've read. So let's get into it. This story comes from Savannah, who starts off this whole email by telling me this all started when her and her friend Faith were watching scary YouTube videos at her house. When it was time for Faith to go home, Savannah asked Faith, "Hey, do you want me to walk you to your car?" And what Savannah's house looks like in my mind is a walkout ranch. Specifically because she says there's a long driveway down to where Faith's car is parked in the grass. So Savannah and Faith walk down this driveway, get to Faith's car, Faith gets in, and Savannah goes back inside. And Savannah in this email specifically says that she made sure to be inside before Faith left because the videos that they had just watched together really freaked her out. And maybe 30 seconds pass before she gets a call from Faith, who's still parked at the end of her driveway. And Faith asks, "Are you still standing at the top of the driveway?" And when Savannah told Faith, "No, I ran back inside before you even started your car because the videos freaked me out," Faith says back, as she was pulling out of the driveway and pulling onto the street, she looked back up and saw Savannah standing there. So she rolled her window down and was calling out to her. And Faith asks whoever that was, "Hey, why are you still standing there?" And Faith obviously did not get a response. And Savannah's friend also mentions that Savannah's face of the one that was standing at the top of the driveway was kind of red, and it looked like there was paint all over her face. But Faith continued to say, "But I don't know because it was dark out and I couldn't really see." And that night, Savannah could not sleep. A couple weeks later, Savannah's on a walk with her brother, and their mom calls Savannah and asks what she wants. To which she obviously replies, "What are you talking about?" And her mom says, "You've been calling me from your room for the past 10 minutes. What do you need?" And obviously she was not home. Then a few days after this, Savannah's grandma says that she heard Savannah's mom calling her, the grandma, up to her bedroom, and when the grandma peeked in, Savannah's mom was sleeping. But that is unfortunately not where it ends. Savannah mentions that she does live in Florida, and during Hurricane Helene, Savannah and her friends were all out sitting on her porch watching the rain come down. And they decided to download a ghost app and try to talk to ghosts. And Savannah says that they were getting some pretty weird responses, but nothing scary, until Faith, the one that saw that thing at the top of her driveway, jumps up and says, "Did you guys hear that?" and ran inside of Savannah's house. And that clearly freaked everyone out, so they all followed Faith inside. And when they asked her what was going on, Faith looked like she was going to cry. And Faith says that she heard a little girl's voice say hello. One of their other friends suggests, "Hey, why don't we get back on the ghost app and see if that little girl responds?" And the app started saying some really weird stuff. Words like burning, fire, dead, escape, kill. So Savannah looks up if there were any fires in their town. And there was. In 1959, in this town, a man burned a hotel down, and when he was interrogated about it, the police had gotten a tip from someone that said this guy was offered $20,000 to burn this hotel down, and when they asked the suspect, he denied it. Savannah concludes this whole email by saying that she does not think it's a coincidence that the app was saying the things that it was, and they found out about the crime. And I do just want to make note that she did send me the newspaper clipping of this happening in 1959. I'm not going to include that because there's just too much information about her in this story where I don't feel comfortable posting her little town too. And at that point, there'd be a lot of people. If you guys have been following for a long time, pause on the story. You know that sometimes when I'm filming, I hear a little, and I just heard it. I don't know if I'll have to check if it's on here. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for my ghost stories.
This is a 100% true story that happened to a woman in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, there was this woman named Sherry who moved into this house with her 2 children in Madison, Wisconsin. Now, she said, at the time she didn't believe in anything supernatural. She really thought that was a bunch of nonsense. But she said, right away when they moved in, she would notice, out of the corner of her eye, sometimes shadows moving across the walls. She would hear strange noises that she couldn't explain. But she said for the most part, it was just a normal house. One night, she's upstairs in her bedroom and she's folding laundry. She hears talking coming from her son's room. So she makes her way over to his room. The door's closed. And she hears her son having a full-on conversation with someone. And she's like, who is he talking to, at 12:30 at night? So she opens the door, and when she looks in his room, he is not in his bed. So she starts yelling for him. She looks down and sees him next to the side of his bed, on his knees, crouched down, with his head under the bed, talking to someone. And she's like, hey, who are you talking to? Like, who's under there? And her son's like, I can't tell you. And she said, what do you mean you can't tell me? Like, who's under the bed? And he's like, I can't say. He'll get mad. And she's like, what? Who's under there? So she runs over to the bed and she looks underneath there. It's empty. There's nothing under there. So she's like, you know what? Just get back in bed. Like, just stop, doing whatever you're doing. Several weeks pass, and on a regular basis, she keeps finding her son talking to someone under the bed, except there's no one there. So after a few weeks of this happening, she thinks maybe something is wrong with her son. So she takes him to this child therapist. The therapist assesses him and says, he seems completely fine. It's probably just his imagination. So several months pass and he keeps on doing this. Well, one day she's sitting down in the living room with him and they're talking when she notices he has some scratches and bruises all over his body. And she's like, where did you get those scratches and bruises from? What's going on? And he's like, I can't say, I can't tell you. And she's like, yes, you have to tell me, what is going on with you? And finally he breaks down and he starts crying and stuff. And he just starts freaking out. And then he runs up to his room. So the mom, at this time is like, I don't know what to do. What is going on with my son? She's just panicking. Later that night, she's awoken to her son screaming in his bedroom. She runs as fast as she can. She goes in his room. She finds him halfway underneath the bed. He's grabbing onto the bed frame, and it looks like something is pulling him under the bed. So she immediately grabs him, pulls him out from under the bed. She looks under there. There's no one there. So she's like, you know what? This is weird. You're sleeping with me tonight. You're going to be in bed with me tonight. So they go back to her bedroom. He lays down. He falls asleep. She's sitting in bed. She can't sleep. She's freaked out about this whole situation. When all of a sudden she hears, shh, hey, come under the bed. And she's like, what? She looks over. Her son is sleeping. But then once again she hears, hey, come here, under the bed. I need to talk to you. And it's a man's voice. And she's like, no, who are you? Go away. And the man's like, come on, get under the bed. I need to tell you something. And she's like, no, I'm not going under the bed. And she said this man, whoever he was, just started yelling obscenities and getting really angry. So she grabs her son. They get out of the house. And she said she left that night and never went back. And still to this day, that house sits there. And she said she's talked to the neighbors. And they said since she's moved, several families have lived there and they move out immediately.
However, coined the phrase, you can't make this stuff up, might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
Imagine witnessing your friend trying to sell you to none other than Baron Samedi. I already know what time it is. It's scary story time. And who needs enemies when you have friends like this? We have this girl. Let's call her Sarah. And the friend that tried to sell her, y'all, not only did that friend try to sell her, that friend attempted to unalive her about 3 times. Call her a snake. Yeah. I got my snack, so get yours. So Sarah knew this girl for about a year or so. Throughout that whole year of friendship, she started to notice that Snake had a jealousy problem. Like at first, she didn't want to jump to conclusions and be like, oh, she's jealous of me. But actions started to show slowly. Which was a bit weird because Sarah was never the type to flaunt stuff or brag. She's a really private person, so nobody really knows her business for real. However, Sarah was one of those lucky people that really never had any money issue as an adult. And she thanks God every day for it. Her faith was so strong that money would just naturally come to her. But that doesn't mean she went around bragging about it. She was just blessed. And because that was her friend at the time, she would always help her friend out whenever she needed it. She was even helping take care of her daughter up until she was 2 to 3 years old. And then they stopped talking, she cut her off permanently for the story I'm about to tell you. Anyways, you get it. So this particular day, she woke up with the heaviest feeling on her heart. No matter how hard she tried, that feeling was just there and she didn't know what it was. She tried to ignore it and go to work, but it was such an overwhelming feeling that she had to keep calling her husband about it. To tell her husband, something is not right. I have this strange feeling. Throughout the day, too, weird things kept happening. There was these parents that physically tried to attack her. And on her way home, her car literally just died in the middle of the highway. And she almost got into this really bad accident because her car literally just stopped. So finally, after an eventful day, with that feeling still heavy on her heart, she makes it home. She's glad she's home. She tells her husband about it. They pray and they go to bed at the end of the night. And this is where it starts getting crazy because when she went to bed, she fell asleep, right? And when she fell asleep, she got up, left her body on the bed, and her soul went to a cemetery. She doesn't know why. She just knows she went to a cemetery. Her soul went to a cemetery. And when she gets there, she's standing there and she's looking around. From afar, she sees 2 people. She sees a lady and she sees a tall man in a top hat, a cane, and a trench coat. Immediately, she already knew who that was. But she can't really tell who the lady is. Not until the lady started talking and she recognized that was her friend's voice. And her friend said to Baon, I have brought a soul for you to take. Excuse me? And Baon replies to her, I can't take this soul, nor do I want this soul. And Miss Snake seems kind of surprised and offended that Baon said this to her. And so she dares question him. She's like, how dare you refuse a soul? This is what you do. I'm bringing you a perfectly good soul. You can do whatever you want with her, and you're telling me you don't want it? Why? And Baon replies, I can't take her soul. And he raises his cane and points it at her. He says, I do not want her, nor can I take her, so bring me another soul. Bring me someone else. And she says, okay, because it's Baon Samedi. You don't want to argue with him. But the thing is, had she actually tried to bring another soul in the place of Sarah, Baon would have just took her instead. Anyway, Sarah wakes up, right? And she's like, what the heck was that? What the hell? And she wakes her husband up and she explains the dream to her husband. So her and her husband prayed once again. Then they went on about their night. And it wasn't until after the dream, turns out, come to find out, y'all, that same night that Sarah had that dream, Snake went to a voodoo priest to sell Sarah's soul to Baron Samedi. And after she went to the voodoo priest, they did what they did to finalize the sale. She went to the military. Mind you, this is same night. Military. Why did I say military? I meant cemetery. I don't know why that came out. Anyways, she went to the cemetery that same night. Do a ritual at the cemetery to finalize killing Sarah. But to her surprise, Baron denied. The whole interaction that she saw in her dream was actually real. She was literally watching Snake, her friend, trying to sell her. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, you gotta stay prayed up. You gotta stay protected. Because who needs enemies when you have a friend like Snake?
I was caught on camera at a children's playground. This is set picture. I am going to cover this portion of it because there is a child in the picture. Their face is blurred out, but I'm going to block all of it as much as I can. We're looking at this up over here. You see that? See that? Let me zoom in on the face for you. Yep. That right there. That's what we're looking at today. That's what we're looking at. So I saw the picture, obviously. I saw the picture on Reddit, and I said, I need to message you and ask you if I can use this picture because that's creepier than shit. And it also came with a lovely story. So let's just dive into that right quick now, shall we? This image resurfaced after a long time of trying to dig it up. To my knowledge, this photo is completely unedited. It was taken with a film camera and since then simply just uploaded digitally. This picture was taken by my mother back in 1999, I believe. It was at a park in New Jersey, and you can actually see the World Trade Center across the river in the background. The child in the picture is my brother, who I covered up for privacy. She disposed of the physical copy and the negative due to the belief of it having some sort of bad energy attached to it. She had told me about it, but she couldn't show it to me. Although the physical copy was gone, she had sworn she uploaded it digitally somewhere. After years of trying to somehow dig it up, we finally found it. For context, she said there was nobody else at the park at the time. Apparently my brother had been acting strange and out of character. He would come up to her crying for what seemed like no reason at all. When she finally had the film processed, you can imagine she almost had a heart attack. I've tried to do my own digging to see if there had been any kind of sightings in this area. Since then, this park appears to just be gone. I find it pretty strange that just looking at this photo, this figure is staring right at the camera. Let's assume there was someone else at the park, like another mom. Why would she be staring at my mom's camera? Why can't you see any other children in the background? I've tried to just chalk it up to being motion blur, but it's strange that you can see my brother walking clear across the playground. As far as this figure goes, it's hard to really make anything out of it. It honestly looks like a Halloween mask. Other than that, it just looks like a humanoid with long hair holding something like a jacket. This photo has really stunted my family for a while, and I want to see what this subreddit makes of it. What do you guys think? Motion blur or a ghost? Anyways, this is particularly scary to me because, one, it deals with children. I'm not the biggest fan of kids to any capacity, let alone at a park where there's lots of them. I'm getting so distracted right now. I don't like this scenario for multiple reasons. One, it's children. Children freak me out. Anything that crawls, including bugs and kids, freaks me out 100%, okay? Secondly, I really don't like the fact that the World Trade Center is in the photo. I really don't like the fact that they can't find the park. And I don't like the fact that there's absolutely no one else at this fucking park. Like, did you guys not realize when you walked into that portal that you were completely alone? Do you know what I mean? At this point, that's what I feel like. I feel like they literally walked into like a completely different world, and that's why that thing was there, and that's why his little brother could see it. Like, I genuinely feel as though they were no longer on Earth, or this version of Earth. I definitely think the photo is absolutely crazy. The way that it looks is insane. The fact that this was a film photo and then transferred to a digital photo, like that, there's no way that that's motion blur, right? Like, I know someone's gonna come on here and say that that's what they think it is, and that's fine. You can think whatever you would like to think. I'm not judging you. But I definitely don't feel like that is motion blur to any degree. I don't know. I don't feel like it is. Hello, hi, my name is Riley, and I read you spooky, scary ghost stories daily for your entertainment. You're welcome. This was a bonus because it also had a picture, so you got super lucky if you're finding this video. Give me a follow, maybe, if you're not already following me, a like, a comment, let OP know. They will be watching this video, just so you are aware. So if you do have any questions, they will be down in the comments at some point to answer those questions, if they should wish to do so. Anyways, I love you guys. I hope you have a fantabulous day. And if you own a business, can you drop some comments? Because I have questions about owning a business. Also, my neighbors literally opened their blinds to watch me film in my car right now. They literally opened them and are sitting like almost exactly how I am watching me. I don't know. I mean, you can't hear what I'm saying. You guys can, but they can't. So What's the point? Anyways, alright, I'm getting off track. I love you guys. Have a great day. Bye.
This is literally the vacation of horror. Rebecca J. Middleton was a 17-year-old Canadian girl excited to go on a vacation with her best friend. They were going to Bermuda, and Bermuda is a British territory in the North Atlantic Ocean. An absolutely beautiful place to be. Her best friend Jasmine Means invited her to go, and they were supposed to be staying at Jasmine's father's house. He lived on the main island. Rebecca's parents felt comfortable with their decision to let her go. They trusted Jasmine, and they also trusted Jasmine's family. Rebecca just can't wait to bathe in the sun and make enjoyable memories with her best friend. Rebecca and Jasmine had landed in Bermuda on June 19th of 1996, and in just a few days, it would be a very special day for Rebecca. It was her birthday. Even though she's far away from home, Jasmine's family want to make it as memorable as possible for her and make sure that she still has a good birthday. As the girls are having fun, they meet 3 boys from the UK who are also on vacation. The boys seem to be really nice. The names of these 3 boys are Russell, Ben, and Jonathan. As they're hanging out with these boys, they find out that one of the boys, Russell, actually has a birthday coming up too, and they invited the girls to come hang out and celebrate the occasion. They decided to celebrate at an old pub and seafood restaurant. However, this pub was actually a little bit different. You did not have to be 21 to be served. You could be 18. So Jasmine and Rebecca take advantage of this and have a few cocktails. Rebecca, though, was only 17, so she could not be served. I'm guessing one of the boys had bought her, a drink. While the group is hanging out, one of the boys make a suggestion to go back to one of their friends' house to continue the party. Although they're having so much fun, the girls realize that they lost track of time. It was way later than they expected. They forgot to call Jasmine's father to pick them up. They call for a taxi and they go outside to wait, but no taxi ever shows up. They call the taxi service for the second time. They say that a taxi did come, but the driver didn't see the girls waiting outside, so he just left. They tell the girls that they'll send another taxi. They wait outside again, but again, the same outcome. Where's the taxi? It's dark outside, the girls are alone, they feel very uncomfortable. Then out of nowhere, a familiar face appears. This makes the girls excited. This is actually a boy by the name Dean Lattimore. Both of the girls knew this boy. As the girls are chatting with Dean, a motorcycle pulls up out of nowhere with 2 men on it. 2 men that neither of the girls knew. The boys say to the girls like, hey, do you guys need a ride? They didn't want nothing to do with these men. They didn't know them. The boys are pretty persistent. They're like, you guys aren't getting a taxi. You might as well just get a ride from us. Like, no one's gonna be coming out here. And what are you girls doing out here alone in the middle of somewhere that you guys don't know anyway? And then they showed excessive interest in Rebecca. They were complimenting her on the necklace she was wearing. It was clear as day that they were very interested in her. They went ahead and accepted these rides. Jasmine actually gets on the motorcycle with Dean, and then Rebecca gets on the motorcycle with the 2 strange men. They take off, and Dean and Jasmine trail behind the motorcycle that Rebecca's on. And when they all reach a bridge, Dean decides that he knows a shortcut to get Jasmine home, so he takes it. Then Rebecca takes off into the night with these 2 unknown males. At around 2:30 in the morning, Jasmine is back home, but she's surprised to see that Rebecca's not there, and she waits some time, but Rebecca still does not show up. Jasmine goes to her father and she's like, I've lost Rebecca, and he's like, what do you mean? Like, how did you lose your friend? So they got into his vehicle and they drove around to look for her. They were driving around for a while, but who was also out driving that night was a group full of friends. The driver of this vehicle was a man by the name Rawlings. He was a club DJ, and he noticed something strange on the side of the road that he got out to look at. What he stumbled upon is he sees a young Caucasian female covered in red, and she's trying to speak to him, but she can't due to a wound that's on her throat. She can't get out what she's trying to say. Paramedics are immediately called to the scene, but by the time they get there, the girl is no longer alive, sadly. At some point, they actually end up calling Jasmine's father saying, hey, can you come down here to identify a girl in a body bag? I'm pretty sure he had reported Rebecca missing, and that's why they called him. When he first opens the body bag at first, he cannot tell if it's her due to the injuries and all the red that she was covered in. He actually had to take a second look to be able to say that it was Rebecca J. Middleton, the 17-year-old Canadian tourist who was here visiting with his daughter. Rick just immediately is overcome with emotion. He just doesn't know how he's going to tell Rebecca's family that their daughter is no longer alive, and this happened to her under his supervision. Rebecca was SA'd, and she had been stabbed over 30 times, which caused her passing. Police feel like if they figure out who she was on the motorcycle with, then that will be the key to solving this case. Dean Lattimore, the one who took Jasmine home safely, as he should. He said that he does actually know who the 2 men were who was supposed to be taking Rebecca home. Their names were Kirk Mundy and Justice Smith. Kirk was 21, Justice was 17. They get in contact with these boys and they are immediately taken in and charged. However, this part makes me very upset because here's why. Kirk actually told them that he had nothing to do with it and that Justice did it. Somehow this only got him 5 years because they believed it. I don't know how, but they did. I think that sometime after he had got out, they did like DNA or something. I'm not sure. All I know is that he got 5 years, and then sometime later they did DNA
DNA and found out that he was lying. He actually was involved, and his DNA was found on Rebecca, but where they are at, they could not retry the same case more than once. I'm not sure if it's like that everywhere. And for that, he was able to walk free. He did 5 years. She was going on a vacation of a lifetime. I mean, she went to Bermuda, and to not only go to Bermuda, she was with her best friend, her bestie. Like, she just wanted to go and enjoy another place with one of her closest friends that she loved so much, and she never made it back home alive.
I think all of the stories I cover are horrible, but this one is downright shocking and disturbing, and it's unlike anything I've heard in a while. Because imagine a fire breaks out in a home, and when authorities arrive, they find a 32-year-old man who weighs 68 pounds, who had been locked inside of a room and held captive for 20 years at the hands of his stepmom. Then he says he intentionally set the fire to escape the home and abuse. That's exactly what happened inside this home, which has now become known as the Connecticut House of Horrors. This story is truly disturbing, and I'm shocked that more people aren't talking about it. So at around 9 p.m. on February 17th of this year, the fire department responded to a home that was on fire in Waterbury, Connecticut. When they arrived, they found 56-year-old Kimberly Sullivan, who was the owner of the home, standing outside holding her dog. Kimberly was the one who reported the fire, and on that 911 call, she said that her stepson was still inside and injured. But right off the bat, authorities thought that something wasn't right because she was only making comments about her dog possibly being hurt. And when they went inside to rescue the stepson, their suspicions were confirmed. To their shock, they found the stepson, whose name has not been publicly released. The stepson, who was 32 years old, only weighed 68 pounds. He was extremely malnourished and emaciated, and all of his teeth were rotten. So obviously that is not a normal condition for a 32-year-old man. And when the stepson was rescued and outside being treated, he told authorities that he intentionally set the fire because his stepmom had been holding him captive for the last 20 years and severely abusing him. He said that he set the fire with a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper so that he could escape the house. And he looked at the authorities and said, quote, "I wanted my freedom." So this sparked an investigation, and what authorities found inside the house and what this poor man had been subjected to over the past 20 years, authorities described as something straight out of a horror movie. The stepson said that his captivity started when he was around 11 years old. He lived in this house with his dad Craig and his stepmom Kimberly for as long as he could remember. His biological mom is still alive, but once she and Craig separated, she was kind of out of the picture, and she didn't really have anything to do with her child / this victim. So the stepson said that in 4th grade, he was pulled out of school after the Department of Children and Families was alerted by the principal of his school. The principal, along with other school officials, became really concerned for this young boy because he was really skinny and he was always hungry. This little boy would steal food from his classmates and would eat out of garbage cans, and everyone at the school, even his young classmates, knew that something was horribly wrong. So school officials reported this to DCF, who then notified police. And on 2 separate occasions, DCF and police went to the Sullivan home. But the stepson told authorities after his rescue that each time they visited, Kimberly instructed him to tell them everything was fine. On the second visit from DCF, Kimberly and the boy's father, Craig, became so angry that they were being investigated that they just pulled the boy from school altogether. And it was at this point, at 11 years old, that he vanished from the public eye. After this, the boy was locked inside of an 8-by-9-foot storage room on the home's 2nd floor for 22 hours a day, sometimes for even a full 24 hours. He was given hardly any food and sometimes had to drink from a toilet and eat food out of a garbage can just to survive, and the room was bolted shut from the outside. The man's father died last year, and after that he said the abuse and captivity worsened. The man said that he was hungry all day every day of his life, and living inside that room was absolute hell. There was no heat in the winter or AC in the summer, and the bathroom conditions were horrific. The man said that he had a potty training chair in the room with him when he was a young kid, but once he turned into a teenager, he was forced to pee in a bottle and go on the newspaper. He told investigators that for the last 20 years, he's had to pee in a bottle and then would have to funnel it into a tube that he made out of a series of straws. He'd then have to carefully get those straws through a tiny hole in the window to empty it. At the time of his rescue last month, he weighed only 68 pounds at 32 years old. He'd never had any dental care, so all of his teeth were rotten, and he hadn't showered in 2 years. He told police that he was only let out at 8 a.m. each day to do a number of chores, but once those chores were done, he was locked back in his room. He said that for the last 20 years, he passed time by counting cars as they passed outside the window, and he taught himself how to read using a dictionary. There was an old radio that faintly played outside of his bedroom, and he said that he used that to keep track of time. After the man was rescued and told police everything that was happening, Kimberly was arrested on a bunch of charges, including second-degree kidnapping. All of this is already so shocking and disturbing, but there's so much more that's come to light in this investigation that's honestly sickening. So Craig and Kimberly also had 2 other daughters who also lived in the home at certain points in their life. During an interview with police after his rescue, the man said that his half-sisters were allowed to have friends over and to have a life, but he was their little secret. He said that it was rare for people to come over and visit, but if they did, he was threatened to keep quiet. But what's really got me is the fact that this poor man said that his half-sisters and even a now deceased grandma all knew about his captivity and abuse, but didn't ever do anything to stop it or to help. The sisters haven't been publicly identified either, but it's reported that they still live close to the home. This story is so incredibly sad for many reasons, but the man's former principal who tried to help is devastated after this discovery. He said that over the years after the boy was pulled out of school officials still continued to worry about his well-being and still tried to report this to DCF. So much so that the Sullivan family filed a harassment complaint against any school official that tried to check up on the boy. The former principal recently said, quote, "We tried everything and everyone knew something wasn't right, but not a damn thing was done." End quote. This has led many people to question how neighbors and extended family didn't know what was going on, and the answer is simple. The Sullivan family reportedly kept to themselves and never interacted with any of their neighbors, and after the fire, when they saw a grown man being rescued from the house, they had no idea who he was. After he was pulled out of school at 11 when the captivity began, when neighbors asked about the little boy who used to live there, Kimberly told them that he went to go live with his mom. That entire 20 years, they'd only ever seen the 2 daughters living there. Not once did they see the boy. Other family members were also pushed away and hadn't seen the man since 2004. They remember back then seeing him around the holidays, and he seemed really thin and quiet, which made them feel like something was wrong. But when they asked Kimberly and Craig about it, they stopped letting them come over, and essentially ghosted everyone who tried pressing them about what was going on with the boy. One of Craig's brothers even became so concerned over the fact that his nephew had just completely vanished about a decade ago that he hired a PI, but they could never find anything. So when he finally saw his nephew after the fire last month, he was in utter shock at his state and what had been going on in that house of horrors. So Kimberly was arrested over this, like I mentioned earlier, but after only spending 1 night in jail, she was released on a $300,000 bond. She has refused to take any responsibility for her actions and is vocal about not thinking she did anything wrong. Kimberly has gone on record to say that Craig was the one who dictated how his son would be raised, and after he died, she just continued on with his wishes. She told police that her stepson was never locked in his room and had free reign over the house, which is clearly a lie. If this poor man would risk potentially dying in a fire that he started himself just to escape, then that means whatever you were doing to him was worse than death. The story makes me so mad because literally everyone failed every version of this man. He was failed as a little boy, as a teenager, and then into adulthood, and so much was stolen from him that can never be given back. I cannot believe that this woman is just walking around free right now, but over everything, I just hope that this man can heal and live a peaceful life from here on out.